Ever feel like your brain is just this bustling city with messages flying in all directions?
Yeah.
Well, get this, it kind of is. Today, we're diving into the world of neurotransmitters,
Right.
the chemical messengers that make all that brain chatter possible.
It's a fascinating area of study,
Oh, I bet.
and even more so when you consider that we're still discovering new neurotransmitters and their functions.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break it down.
Sure.
What exactly defines a neurotransmitter? It seems like a pretty exclusive club.
You're right, not just any molecule can join this party.
Right.
For a chemical to be considered a neurotransmitter, it needs to meet a few key criteria.
Okay.
First, it needs to be present within the neuron.
Mm,
Think of it like the neuron having the message already written and ready to send.
Makes sense. No point in having a messenger without a message. What's next?
Second, the neurotransmitter has to be released when the neuron is activated.
Okay.
No hanging out in the neuron if it's not going to deliver the message.
Right.
And finally, it needs to bind to specific receptors on the receiving neuron, like ensuring the message is delivered to the right inbox.
So it's like a complex mail system with specific senders, delivery mechanisms, and recipients all within the microscopic world of our brains.
Incredible. But I imagine with a communication network this vast, there has to be more than one type of messenger, right?
You're spot on. Just like we have different ways to communicate a quick text, a detailed email, a good old-fashioned letter
Sweet.
do,
Yeah.
our brains have different types of neurotransmitters. We can broadly categorize them as small molecule neurotransmitters and neuropeptides. Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the difference between these two VIPs of the neurotransmitter world?
Think of it this way. Small molecule neurotransmitters, like acetylcholine and dopamine, are like text messages, quick, efficient, and designed for immediate action.
Gotcha.
They're synthesized and packaged in the axon terminal, ready to be released in a moment's notice. Neuropeptides, on the other hand, are like those beautifully written letters, larger, more complex, and often involved in slower, more prolonged processes, like mood regulation and pain perception.
So, depending on the message, the brain chooses the right messenger for the job. But with so many neurotransmitters, where do we even begin our exploration?
A great place to start is with the one that kicked off our understanding of neurotransmission, acetylcholine.
Okay.
This was the first neurotransmitter ever discovered, and its primary claim to fame is its role in muscle movement.
Wait, so every time I move, even something as simple as tapping my foot, I have acetylcholine to thank for it.
You got it.
Wow.
Acetylcholine is crucial for the communication between nerves and muscles, a process we call neuromuscular transmission.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how this muscle-moving messenger actually works.
Let's picture the point where a neuron meets a muscle fiber. This is called the neuromuscular junction. When a signal for movement travels down a neuron, it reaches the axon terminal, causing the release of acetylcholine into this junction.
Okay.
Acetylcholine then binds to specialized receptors on the muscle fiber, much like a key fitting into a lock.
And this binding unlocks the muscle's ability to contract.
Precisely. It triggers a series of events that lead to muscle contraction. But just like a key needs to be removed for the lock to work again, acetylcholine is rapidly broken down by an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. This breakdown is crucial for ensuring that our muscles don't get stuck in a constant state of contraction.
It's like a finely tuned orchestra, with each molecule playing its part perfectly to create a symphony of movement. But I can't help but think about those terrifying stories of neurotoxins, like in snake venom.
Right.
Don't some of them mess with this whole acetylcholine system?
You're right. Some neurotoxins directly target this intricate communication system.
Yeah.
For example, the alpha-bungrotoxin found in crate venom specifically binds to those acetylcholine receptors we talked about, blocking acetylcholine from doing its job.
So the key is essentially jammed in the lock, preventing any other signals from getting through. No wonder these venoms can be so deadly. But are there any human health conditions where this communication pathway is disrupted?
Absolutely. A poignant example is myasthenia gravis, an autoimmune disease where the body's own immune system mistakenly attacks those acetylcholine receptors.
Oh, wow.
This leads to muscle weakness and fatigue as the signals for movement are disrupted.
It really highlights how even subtle disruptions in this delicate chemical dance can have significant consequences for our health. Okay, we've covered the OG, the muscle mover, but the brain is capable of so much more than just movement.
Right.
What's next on our neurotransmitter tour?
Let's shift our focus to a neurotransmitter that's absolutely crucial for learning, memory, and just about every other brain function you can imagine. Glutamate.
Glutamate, that rings a bell. It's everywhere, isn't it? Like the overachiever of the neurotransmitter world.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Glutamate is the most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, meaning it excites neurons, making them more likely to fire and send signals.
Okay.
In fact, it's estimated that over half of our synapses utilize glutamate for communication.
Wow, talk about a heavy workload. But how does glutamate actually work? Does it have its own specific way of getting the message across?
Glutamate, like acetylcholine, needs to bind to specific receptors on the receiving neuron to exert its effects.
Are these receptors similar to those acetylcholine ones we talked about?
There are similarities, but glutamate receptors come in a few different flavors, each with its own personality and role to play in the brain symphony. One type in particular is incredibly important for learning and memory, the NMDA receptor.
Hold on, NMDA receptors, as in those aha moments I love, those sudden bursts of understanding. Are you telling me those involve this glutamate and its NMDA posse?
You got it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Those moments of insight where things suddenly click into place likely involve NMDA receptors in action.
This is blowing my mind. So, how do these NMDA receptors differ from the other glutamate receptors? What makes them the brain's aha moment generators?
What's fascinating about NMDA receptors is that they're like the bouncers at an exclusive club. They need more than just glutamate to let the party start. They also require the neuron to be in a depolarized state.
Depolarized state. Okay, you're going to have to break that one down for me.
Imagine a neuron at rest has a slightly negative charge inside compared to the outside. Depolarization is when that charge difference decreases, making the inside of the neuron more positive.
So it's like flipping a switch to activate the neuron.
Precisely. And this is where it gets interesting. For the NMDA receptor to open its channel and allow ions to flow, two things need to happen simultaneously. Glutamate needs to bind to it, and the neuron needs to be depolarized.
So it's like the neuron is saying, hold on, I need confirmation from multiple sources before I get excited about this message.
Right.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like a built-in system to ensure the message is important enough to warrant action.
Exactly. And this requirement for dual activation is thought to be one of the reasons why NMDA receptors are so crucial for learning and memory.
Okay, I am officially in awe of these tiny but mighty neurotransmitters, but I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg. What other fascinating characters are waiting to be discovered in this intricate brain drama?
We've only just begun to scratch the surface, but before we delve into the world of dopamine, serotonin, and the rest of the neurotransmitter cast, let's talk about what happens when the brain needs to hit the brakes.
Because too much excitement can't be a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the brain where things need to be carefully balanced.
Exactly. And that's where our next neurotransmitter stars come in. GABA and glycine, the brain's chill pills.
GABA and glycine, it's like the brain has its own built-in relaxation system.
Exactly.
I'm already feeling calmer just thinking about it. But how do these chill pills actually work? What makes them the yin to glutamate's yang?
Well, if glutamate is the brain's accelerator, then GABA and glycine are the brakes,
Right.
ensuring things don't get too revved up. You see, they act as inhibitory neurotransmitters, meaning they make neurons less likely to fire off those excitatory signals.
Okay, so it's all about maintaining that delicate balance, keeping the brain from being stuck in overdrive. But how do they actually accomplish this calming effect?
Let's focus on GABA for a moment.
Okay.
Its primary way of bringing the chill is by increasing the flow of negatively charged chloride ions into neurons.
Chloride ions. Those sound familiar from chemistry class, but how do they contribute to a more zen-like state of mind?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
Neurons, like tiny batteries, have an electrical potential across their membranes.
Right.
When that potential difference reaches a certain threshold, the neuron fires, sending a signal.
Yeah.
Chloride ions, with their negative charge, make it harder for the neuron to reach that threshold, essentially making it less excitable.
So it's like GABA is giving those hyperactive neurons a little timeout, preventing them from getting overly stimulated. But you mentioned something earlier about GABA being excitatory in the developing brain. How does that work? It seems counterintuitive.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Yeah.
You see, in the adult brain, there's a higher concentration of chloride ions outside of neurons compared to the inside.
Okay.
When GABA opens those chloride channels, the ions flow down their concentration gradient, rushing into the neuron and causing inhibition.
Right.
However, in the developing brain, the situation is reversed. There's a higher concentration of chloride ions inside the neurons.
So when GABA opens those channels in a developing neuron, the chloride ions actually flow out, making the inside more positive. And that causes excitation instead of inhibition.
Precisely. It highlights the incredible plasticity of the brain and how its response to even the same neurotransmitter can change throughout development.
That is mind-blowing. Okay, so we've got the brains on switch, the off switch, but what about those times when we need a little boost, a surge of motivation, or that feeling of reward after accomplishing a goal? What's the brain's secret weapon for those moments?
You're talking about the realm of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that's often associated with pleasure, reward, and motivation.
Mm.
It's the brain's way of saying, yes, that was awesome, let's do it again.
Dopamine, that's the one we always hear about in relation to addiction, right?
Right.
But it's not all about chasing those fleeting highs, is it?
Not at all.
Right.
Dopamine plays a crucial role in many essential functions, from voluntary movement and attention to learning and motivation.
Right.
It's about seeking out rewards that are essential for survival and well-being.
So it's like the brain's internal reward system reinforcing behaviors that are beneficial for us. But I am curious about the connection to addiction. How does dopamine go from being this helpful messenger to being involved in something as harmful as addiction?
It all comes down to the delicate balance of dopamine in the brain.
Right.
Drugs like cocaine, for example, interfere with the normal reuptake of dopamine, flooding the synapse with an excess of this neurotransmitter.
So instead of the dopamine being carefully released and then reabsorbed, cocaine throws a wrench in the system, leading to a massive dopamine surge.
Exactly. And this surge is what creates that intense feeling of euphoria, that high that people who struggle with addiction chase after.
Right.
However, over time, the brain adapts to this dopamine overload, leading to tolerance, meaning you need more of the drug to achieve the same effect, and eventually dependence, where the brain comes to rely on that external source of dopamine to function.
It's a stark reminder that even though these neurochemicals are naturally occurring and essential for normal brain function, their manipulation can have profound and often devastating consequences.
Precisely. And this delicate balance is equally crucial for other neurotransmitters like serotonin, which plays a vital role in mood regulation, sleep, and even appetite.
Serotonin, that's the one that's targeted by those SSRI antidepressants, right?
Right.
The ones that are often prescribed for depression and anxiety.
Exactly. SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, work by increasing the amount of serotonin available in the brain's synapses, much like how cocaine disrupts dopamine reuptake,
Yeah.
but in a more controlled and therapeutic way.
So instead of flooding the synapse, SSRIs help to maintain a steadier, more balanced level of serotonin.
Right.
And that can help to alleviate the symptoms of depression.
That's the idea.
Yep.
Of course, the brain is incredibly complex,
Right.
and the exact mechanisms by which SSRIs exert their therapeutic effects are still being studied.
Right.
But we do know that serotonin plays a crucial role in mood regulation, and boosting its levels can be helpful for many people struggling with depression.
It's fascinating how these tiny molecules can have such a profound impact on our mental and emotional well-being. But we've talked a lot about neurotransmitters involved in mood regulation, movement, and even addiction. What about those fight or flight responses we experience when we face a perceived threat?
Sure.
What's going on in the brain during those moments of adrenaline-fueled action?
You're entering the realm of norepinephrine and epinephrine, the dynamic duo of the stress response.
Mm-hmm.
They're like the brain's alarm system, preparing us to either confront the danger head-on or make a swift escape.
So when that surge of adrenaline hits, it's actually norepinephrine and epinephrine orchestrating that response.
Yeah.
It's incredibly how quickly our bodies can shift gears from a calm state to being ready for action.
It's a testament to the power of evolution. This rapid response system has been honed over millennia to increase our chances of survival.
Okay, I'm all for a little adrenaline rush now and then, but what about those times when we need to dial it down, when we need to recover from stress or injury? What does the brain have up its sleeve for those moments?
That's where our body's natural pain relief system comes into play, orchestrated by a fascinating group of neurotransmitters called endorphins.
Endorphins, I've heard them described as our body's own morphine, providing pain relief and even a sense of euphoria. What's their secret?
Endorphins, much like those opioid painkillers you mentioned, bind to specific receptors in the brain, primarily those involved in pain perception and reward.
So they essentially hijack the pain pathways, reducing the signals of pain and even replacing them with feelings of pleasure. That's one way to deal with discomfort.
It's an incredibly effective system, and it's not just about pain relief.
Right.
Endorphins are also involved in regulating stress, mood, and even immune function.
Wow.
They're like the brain's multi-talented healers, promoting well-being on multiple levels.
It's incredible to think that our bodies have this innate ability to manage pain and promote healing. But I can't help but wonder about the connection to those powerful opioid painkillers. Is there a downside to this natural pain relief system?
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
While endorphins are essential for our well-being, there's a fine line between their beneficial effects and the potential for disruption when external substances like opioid medications come into play.
So, just like with dopamine and cocaine, opioid medications can hijack the endorphin system, leading to tolerance, dependence, and even addiction.
Precisely. It highlights the importance of using these medications responsibly and under the guidance of a healthcare professional, as well as exploring alternative pain management strategies that work in harmony with the body's natural systems. But even with all these amazing neurotransmitters, it seems like we've only just begun to scratch the surface of the brain's complexity.
You're telling me every time we delve deeper, it's like a whole new world opens up. What other fascinating characters are waiting to be discovered in this intricate brain drama?
Yeah, it really is like every time we peel back a layer, there's a whole other level of complexity, isn't there?
Exactly. And that's part of what makes studying the brain so captivating. There's always more to discover.
So tell me then, what haven't we covered yet? What else is going on in this inner world of these chemical messengers? Well, there's a whole other class of neurotransmitters we haven't even touched on yet, and they're pretty fascinating in their own right.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay on me.
These are the endocannabinoids.
Endocannabinoids. That name rings a bell. It makes me think of, well,
Yeah, you're on the right track.
cannabis. Right.
Exactly. Endocannabinoids are essentially our body's own version of the compounds found in cannabis.
Wow, so our brains have their own built-in cannabis system? That's wild.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it? They interact with the same receptors, known as cannabinoid receptors, and they play a role in a wide range of functions, from regulating mood and pain to influencing appetite and even memory.
Wow, okay, so how do they actually work? Are they similar to the other neurotransmitters we've been talking about?
They share some similarities, but endocannabinoids operate in a way that really highlights the brain's incredible capacity for nuanced communication. You see, most neurotransmitters we've talked about travel in one direction across the synapse, from the presynaptic neuron to the postsynaptic neuron.
Right, like a one-way street.
Precisely. But endocannabinoids do things a bit differently. They're what we call retrograde messengers,
Retrograde messengers, what's that?
meaning they can actually travel backwards across the synapse from the postsynaptic neuron back to the presynaptic neuron.
Whoa, so it's like a return message. That's so cool. But why would the brain need this kind of reverse communication?
That's a great question. It basically allows for a level of fine-tuning and feedback that's essential for maintaining balance and flexibility in the nervous system.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So give me an example. How would this retrograde signaling work in action?
Sure, let's say a postsynaptic neuron is getting bombarded with excitatory signals.
Huh?
It's firing like crazy.
Okay, too much excitement.
Exactly. So to prevent itself from getting overwhelmed, that postsynaptic neuron can release endocannabinoids to send a message back to the presynaptic neuron, essentially saying, hey, ease up on the gas a bit.
It's like its own little feedback loop. The brain is incredible.
It really is. And this retrograde signaling is just one example of the many intricate mechanisms that the brain uses to maintain that delicate balance.
Right, that balance between excitation and inhibition that we've been talking about.
Exactly. A constant dance between neurotransmitters like glutamate and GABA.
It's mind-blowing to think about all of this happening in our brains every second of every day without us even realizing it. This whole conversation has given me such a new appreciation for just how complex and dynamic our brains truly are.
I agree. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much we don't know about the brain and its intricate symphony of neurotransmitters.
It makes you wonder what else we'll discover, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But one thing we know for sure is that these tiny molecules, these neurotransmitters, have a profound impact on every aspect of our lives. Our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and even our physical health.
It's a powerful reminder that even though we can't see them, these chemical messengers are constantly at work shaping our experiences and ultimately making us who we are.
Well said.
Well, this deep dive has been absolutely fascinating. We've explored so much today, from the different types of neurotransmitters to their roles in communication and their influence on everything from muscle movement to mood to addiction, even our response to stress.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise, it's really incredible when you think about it.
It really is a testament to the power and complexity of the human brain.
Absolutely. And I think it really underscores the importance of caring for our mental health, seeking help when we need it, and just making choices that support the well-being of our brains.
Couldn't agree more.
It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you today. I'm walking away with a newfound appreciation for this incredible world inside my head.
The feeling is mutual. And remember, there's always more to learn and explore in this ever-evolving landscape of neuroscience.
That is so true. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you've enjoyed this journey into the world of neurotransmitters as much as we have. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.